It was the original masterpiece of revenge, confrontation, and murder. Watched a film that was released on this very day in 1962, and it starred Gregory Peck and Bob Mitchum. It was Cape Fear, and this is Slasher Sports Cinema.
And I'm here to kill you.
I am Dracula.
You say that I have shed innocent blood. What's blood for, if not for shedding?
6-year-old child with this blank, pale, emotionless face, the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes.
Welcome, Slasher Sports Cinema. This is a proud, maybe a not so proud production of Slasher Sports, where we're not afraid to talk about the things we love. I'm talking everything from Major League Baseball to your favorite slashes and screams and horror cinema. Do me a solid, hit that subscribe button on my YouTube. Appreciate that. Helps more than I can really say. I mean, I could say it, but we don't have a lot of time. And while you're here, drop something in the chat. I really like interacting with all you creatures of the night. That was stupid. Creatures of the night. Who even says that? Anyway. No, y'all, we're here to talk about a very special film. And, it did drop on this very day, April 18th in 1962. Some would have you believe that was 10 years after I was born, but no, I'm not that old. But the film was Cape Fear. All right, it's not to be confused with the 1990s version. I believe it was 91 that starred Nick Nolte. Nick Nolte at the height of his Nick Noltiness. This is pre-mugshot Nick Nolte, when he was still a pretty normal guy. I mean, he is a normal guy now. Let's not let his legal transgressions come between his what should be a Hall of Fame. If there was an Actors Hall of Fame, is there Actors Hall of Fame? I don't know. He could be in the Baseball Hall of Fame for all I care. He's a fantastic actor. I liked most of everything he's done between 48 Hours, North Dallas 40. Hell, I even like Three Fugitives. Why the hell not? But Nick Nolte was, he knocked that role out of the park. But listen, if there is a constant between the 1991 and 1962 versions of Cape Fear, it is that the antagonist, Max Cady, what can I say about Max Cady? Listen, I'll tell you what about Max Cady. That man was slicker than cum on a gold tooth. What's that do for you? Yeah, I promise not to keep too much language in this podcast like that. But that's slick. You know it's slick. But yeah, this one did not star Bobby De Niro, nor Nick Nolte, nor Juliette Lewis, nor whoever the hell else was in it. Who it did star was Gregory Peck and Bob Mitchum. Okay, and that was an on-screen rivalry as much as it was an off-screen rivalry. Maybe to the point where they just kind of tried to outact each other. I don't know how you outact each other, but I'm not an actor. I act like a jackass on this podcast, but that's the best I can do. Nobody's going to be calling me for Cape Fear too. So, no, this film was directed by J. Lee Thompson, not a household name by any stretch of the imagination, but he was a director and a writer, a very talented screenwriter. You'd know him from the Guns of Navarone, 61 film. That's probably my favorite of his. And yeah, that old Bob Mitchum, that son of a bitch. Listen, Bob Mitchum is not one to be fucked with. Okay, he had a reputation for being underwhelming, but purposely underwhelming. And he was a fantastic actor, and almost the antithesis of what you would think the liberal Hollywood types would be into, with his personal life. Gabriela Marins, boa noite, e muito obrigado pela torcida. Probably didn't say that right. But anyway, thank you for tuning in all the way from Bucios, Brazil. And Jen from the city so nice they named it twice, New York. The other name is Manhattan. But y'all, listen, this film, I hope that somebody listening tonight has seen this film recently. Cape Fear was shot in black and white. Could have been 62. It could have been shot in color, but it was not. They wanted to keep that vibe, that Hitchcockian vibe, that noir style filming. And man, I don't know that I would have enjoyed it as much if it was in color. I think the black and white really made this film better than any other presentation. But let's jump back to J. Lee Thompson. The Guns of Navarone, I already mentioned. Woman in a Dressing Gown from 57, and Conquest with the Planet of the Apes. Not my favorite Planet of the Apes movie. Not by a long shot. But he did direct Death Wish 4. Death Wish 4. Did he not? I'm pretty sure he did. But, when you talk about actor-director relationships, I'd seen a good friend of mine. I can't even place which friend it was. But he said, you wonder why so many independent film directors cast the same actors over and over again. And like most think it's because they're just comfortable shooting with them. And that's true to a certain level. But he also went on to mention that indie film directors get dicked over so often by talent, by backing out and who knows what else, that they kind of just have to stick with who they know is going to come through for them. And Gregory Peck said that J. Lee Thompson was one of like 4 directors that he fully trusted to not be a rah-rah guy, to not be a yes man, to not tell him that everything he was doing was great. He'd be honest with him. Now, 2 of those other directors that Peck trusted the most, Alfred Hitchcock and George Cukor. And that would be My Fair Lady, George Cukor. But yeah, this thing starred Gregory Peck and Robert Mitchum. I jokingly call him Bob Mitchum. We're on first name basis. We're on nickname basis. He calls me Bill, call him Bob. But, Gregory Peck always kind of played that, I guess, heroic baby face. The white bread, just plain white milk, no Swiss Miss in his cup. I love good Swiss Miss. I hope you notice that this spoon that I've got is far too tall for my cup. What I didn't want and I did this for the production value of this podcast, was to not have you guys hear my cup and spoon just clinging around there. I got this plastic one that I saved from Dairy Queen because my fat ass was probably eating a blizzard sometime last week, so I saved the spoon. Well, anyway, let me digress back to the subject here. But Gregory Peck was notably the baby face in every movie that he was ever in. I can't think of a movie where he would have been the bad guy. If he was in one, it's not in the top of my head right now. Maybe my mama knows. Maybe my mama knows. I don't know. But I mean, obviously, To Kill a Mockingbird was his most notable film. But for here at Slasher Sports, for us here at Slasher Sports, it's got to be The Omen, right? It has to be The Omen. I mean, come on, give me a break, right? That's us. That's up our alley, The Omen. But you know, his antithesis in Cape Fear, played by Bob Mitchum, was a character that, if you were to ask, maybe the consensus, oh, Steve Morris, you handsome devil, come on in here. Love The Omen. Of course you'll love The Omen. Who wouldn't? Greetings to Steve Morris. Very talented independent filmmaker. Has been on and will be on again Slasher Sports Cinema, because we got I believe it's Bad Apples to talk about, do we not, Steven? I believe we do. Came up with that off the top of my head. See, you people are important to me, Steve Morris. People like you are very important to me. Without you, I'm just sitting here rambling about a film that came out in 1962. Okay? I'll tell you what. You give me 10 Steve Morrises, I'd take on the fucking world. I shit you not. Steve, you're a hell of a man. Love you for it. But let's talk about Bob Mitchum for a second. You know, on screen, off screen, he was kind of the guy that was too cool for school. You know, had just, the word that keeps coming up is indifferent, apathetic. Like, if it does, it does. If it don't, it don't. But he often played the roles, especially in his up-and-coming years, played like the loner, the lonely loner on a lonesome road to loneliness. And the most impressive thing about him, though, he often never rehearses lines. And I wonder how much of his work was improv. And I'm a very big fan of improvisation, especially in films where it's not necessarily comedy. I talked to a very good director by the name of Jim Burkett a long time ago. And he directed the film Coherence, which is to this day, one of my favorite independent films. Hopefully he gets Shatterbelt up off the ground, because that's going to be a Twilight Zone-y, Outer Limits kind of a situation. And, you know, I dig that. But, you know, I really dig how his movie Coherence was largely improv, if not 1,000% improv, with the exception of, you know, having his mole, quote unquote mole, an actor who would basically bring everybody back in when they started to get a little bit too far off track. But, you know, he was, Bob Mitchum was, you know, one of four actors to have two villainous roles ranked in American Film Institute's 100 Years of the Greatest Heroes and Villains, as Max Cady in Cape Fear at 28 and Reverend Harry Powell in The Night of the Hunter at 29. So he's back to back. The other actors are Jack Nicholson, Bette Davis, and Faye Dunaway. Good God. But, you know, the reason I talked about how he wasn't really the prototypical actor that Hollywood types might get behind is because he was a really conservative guy, very conservative politically. But somehow he appealed to younger audiences. Um, you know, but politics aside, he was just a cool cat, amazing actor. Um, Cape Fear is not the same film with any other Max Cady. Just think, to do him justice, they had to cast Bobby De Niro in the remake. Bob Mitchum set the standard. De Niro made it his own, but Mitchum's not playing second fiddle here. Like, watch with an open mind. Like, don't turn your nose up at this old black and white film that's got no bells or whistles. Watch the film. There's a reason these are classics. Pro wrestling fans from the early 90s might remember a short-lived but very memorable wrestler named Waylon Mercy. And Waylon Mercy was portrayed by a longtime wrestler named Dan Spivey. Left-handed, because that's the very first thing I ever notice about somebody is their handedness. It's just what I do. I'm a lefty, so I notice a lefty very quickly. But Dan Spivey was already kind of in the twilight of his career. Body was beaten up after years of working on the road. So they put this gimmick, Waylon Mercy, on Dan Spivey, who didn't have a lot of mileage left in him. The reason I say that is because I think the character Waylon Mercy was ahead of his time. I think he was ahead of his time. He was just a little bit too dark, a little bit too ironically dark. Like, you could dress somebody up in dark clothes and give him dark hair and a dark beard and, call him the Undertaker. And, well, he was ahead of his time too. But still, you had some of these guys who you could just tell they were a bad guy. But Waylon Mercy would come out in his white slacks and his, I guess his flowery Hawaiian pattern button-up shirt. And, he looked like a friendly guy. He would smile in your face. He would shake the referee's hand. And then the bell would ring. And he would just kind of go apeshit on the opponent. But what I remember most about Waylon Mercy was his promos, and it fits perfectly with how Max Cady was in these films, both films. Waylon Mercy would say, we're here at the party. He would talk in this Southern accent because obviously Dan Spivey was a hillbilly already, and I'd recognize one. Takes one to know one. But Waylon Mercy would say things like, well, the most important thing he would say is what he would end off his promo with. He would look at his hands and he would say, lives are going to be in Waylon Mercy's hands. You know what I mean? To a kid like me, hearing a promo like that, you just sense this deviousness. And when Max Cady spoke in these films, you could hear him coming off as that slick, I told you how slick earlier, but it's just a slick talker, very underwhelmed by the situation, almost a little too confident in the depths of darkness that he'll go to get what he wants, versus the white meat babyface and Gregory Peck. But the Peck and Mitchum were contrasted personalities. Peck was always really prepared for his roles. He just nonstop preparation, always thinking about what he's going to do next. While Mitchum kind of just winged it. He would learn his lines right before a scene. He just had this photographic memory where he doesn't have to spend a lot of time on it. I wish I had that kind of talent with everything. But, I've talked about the 4 levels of understanding something. And, you've got level 1, which is unconscious incompetence, meaning that you don't know what you're doing and you don't know why you're doing it. And you don't know how to figure out how to do it. Okay, that's before you know anything. And then the next level 2, is conscious incompetence. It means you don't know what you're doing, but at least you know how to figure it out. Level 3 is conscious competence. It means that you know what you're doing and you know what it took to get there. And then on the final level, unconscious competence. And this is where you want to perform, because it means you know what you're doing, but you don't even know why. You just know, and it comes to you naturally. And I think that's where Robert Mitchum, that's the level in which Robert Mitchum acted at. He just did it, didn't know why he was able to do it so well, but he did do it well. And then you take Gregory Peck, who was probably consciously competent, meaning he knew his shit and he knew why he knew his shit, and he could probably teach you to know your shit. You learn from a Gregory Peck, but you strive to perform like a Robert Mitchum. That was deeper than I thought it was going to get. But yeah, as the producer of this movie was Gregory Peck. He supervised the editing, and at no point did he put his character above Mitchum. He had to know what kind of talent he had across from him in Robert Mitchum. But Peck was the guy. He was Atticus Finch, All-American, stood for good in everything he did. I think about some of the characters some of the actors that could have played this character and were on board to play this character, or at least not on board. They were considered to play this character. Thank you very much, Steve. But you had Charles Bronson, fucking Chuck Bronson, man. He got to work with Thompson in Death Wish 4. But James Coburn, Charlton Heston, that would have been great. Gordon Street. Jack Palance, my least favorite fucking Dracula to ever play Dracula, and that is including Leslie Nielsen. And probably now Nick Cage. Jack Palance. My introduction. Not going to do that again. I'll edit that out later. My introduction to Jack Palance was whoever the fuck he was playing in Batman, 1989 Batman. I didn't like him then. I didn't like him in Dracula. He was pretty good in City Slickers. That's where I kind of got my love for him. But man, the absolute worst Dracula ever put on the face of the earth. And I don't think those were Hammer films. No, those were not Hammer, because that was Christopher Lee. But also John Wayne was considered for this role. Could you consider John Wayne a good Sam Bowden? I don't know. But Heston got the role. Charlton Heston got the role. And I don't know if he just needed too much money, if things fell apart, but Gregory Peck was a last-minute replacement. And the role of Max Cady was actually going to Ernest Borgnine. Imagine that. We're talking if you are a father of 20-year-olds right now, much like myself, you might know Ernest as Mermaid Man from SpongeBob. Evil. That's how I know him the most. But he would have been Max Cady. I don't know that this would have been the same film as it was without Bob Mitchum. Rod Steiger actually wanted to play Cady. But he backed off. He withdrew his name from consideration when he heard that Robert Mitchum was set to play this role. New content. Go back to the classic. Oh yeah, Steve. Listen, man. This is gonna be a thing that we're gonna do going forward, man. On this day in horror history, we're gonna revisit some of these classics, even if it's something stupid like Intruder, wink wink, Nudge, nudge. Intruder might be coming up because it may have released on tomorrow's day in horror history. I hope you go back and check out 62, Cape Fear, Steve. It's a hell of a film. Hell of a film. But, this film is interesting because, again, Rod Steiger, he was Chief Gillespie in the original In the Heat of the Night. So you've got some chops here going up against Mitchum for the role of Max Cady. But you don't have in Rod Steiger what you have in Robert Mitchum. Jim Backus, Thurston Howell III from Gilligan's Island. He was supposed to play attorney Dave Grafton, but he dropped out to go and play Thurston Howell, the rich guy from Gilligan's Island. But this film was a financial failure, and it led to the production company of Gregory Peck folding. So it's funny how film works. Something can come out, be in theaters, cost $1 trillion, and cost you your livelihood, and then 30 years later become an amazing classic. It happened with films like Billy Jack. It happened with the Warriors. Billy Jack was great. Billy Jack was actually a sequel. Billy Jack was not the first of the Billy Jack films. The first one was called The Born Losers, and in that film, Billy Jack's hat was like a regular Stetson cowboy hat. It was not that round brim with the Native American band on it, like became the trademark Billy Jack hat. But this isn't about Billy Jack. We're talking about independent films, or at least low budget films that failed in theaters and just somehow became cult classics. I think Cape Fear did that. And again, Melville Productions went under because of the financial failure of Cape Fear. And it is such a bullshit reason because the film is amazing. But you know what? I talked about that on-screen rivalry with Gregory Peck and Robert Mitchum. Peck said, I'd given him the role and I paid him a terrific amount of money. Maybe that's why your production company went under. But he said, it was obvious that he had the better role. I thought he would understand that, but he apparently thought he acted me off the screen. I didn't think highly of him for that. Well, I hate to tell you, Peck, Robert Mitchum did just that. And Gregory Peck did not come out and, lay an egg. He did a fine job, but we're in a time now where we like the villains a little bit more in film, don't we? Especially in horror. We really like our killers. We like our bad people. When we think about the film Misery, do we think about Paul Sheldon, or do we think about Annie Wilkes? Jen Antonia, you cannot beat Bob M. Oh, no, you can't. And that is M for murder. M for magnificent. M for Mitchum. But, Mitchum didn't even want to do the film. But Peck and Thompson, J. Lee Thompson, they gave him a big old case of bourbon. And he got drunk. And his quote, okay, this is a quote. I didn't make this up. He said, okay, I've drunk your bourbon. I'm drunk. I'll do it. I don't know how many things I would have agreed to in my lifetime if I'd been drunk. That's why I'm not a drinker. That's why I drink Swiss Miss. Don't tell my good friend Colby Peterson that I'm drinking Swiss Miss, because he gave me a big old canister of Stevens Gourmet hot cocoa from Utah, because he is from Ogden, Utah, and he's a big fan of Weber State. Does a fantastic podcast for their college sports programs. So Colby, sorry. Hey, do y'all like that? Pour me a cup. I hope you do. But yeah, this film, again, I told you earlier that the film was, envisioned in black and white. It could have been shot in color, but they thought about this thing having a Hitchcockian element, and they wanted to use just unusual lighting angles, very eerie music. And, I've talked a lot about sound over the last few weeks, and the musical score of a film is very important. The score was so good in this film that they reused it for the 91 version. How often does that happen? You're going to update that stuff usually, but no, they use the same score. But, this film was not without controversy. Before it got released, they heavily censored this thing with, the fight scenes were heavily censored. There were times where it was implied that Max Cady was going to sexually assault and murder Peggy and Nancy. Those parts were taken out and never restored, never ever restored. But in the source novel, which was called The Executioners, Cady, he was a court-martialed convicted soldier. And then I guess Lieutenant Bowden he'd made him for like the rape of a kid, the rape of a teenage girl. Censors came in and said, no, we're not going to use the R word. We're just going to, we're going to make him a regular Joe because this looks bad on the U.S. military. And yeah, they pieced it up a little bit. I'm not mad about it. I'm just saying that, this is what happened. But, J. Lee Thompson did complain a lot that the film had gotten ruined by the number of cuts, the number of edits. Like up to 100 edits is what was made out of this film. And depending on which side you believe, Thompson says there were 100. Trevelyan said that they'd only made like 15 cuts, like 6 minutes worth. It really does depend on who you ask. But they made a lot of changes to the dialogue, which honestly, I don't know if they did bad here because the dialogue in this film is fantastic. Maybe it was just a little bit too cutting edge for the time. But yeah, they said 6 minutes worth is all they did. And they took out some of the threatening dialogue, the assault references. They took out Katie's attack on Peggy. And then some of the stuff that they really heavily edited were the way he would look at Nancy. And Nancy's the kid. Nancy is Gregory Peck's, I think, 11, 12-year-old daughter in the film. He makes some pretty bad comments about her, how she's going to grow up to look like her mom. She's going to grow up to be hot like her mom. I don't know, like whatever it is that he was saying, but it's some pretty rough for 2023. It wouldn't fly here. But UK video releases restored all this stuff. So if you want to see the full situation, find you a UK release of Cape Fear and then enjoy the film. Now, it's not going to be a Slasher Sports Cinema podcast talking about a classic film unless I get to talk about the absolute hammer, and I do mean hammer, that Barry Chase was. Barry Chase played Diane Taylor. She's the one who went home with Max Cady and ended up getting assaulted. But you see that scene where she's laying on the bed, jeepers creepers. You know what? I'm not going to talk very much more here. Look at it. I'm going to fuck you up. Yeah.
Feel suspense. Suspense that grips your heart in a vice.
Look at that.
Feel
Jesus.
Fear. Numbing, paralyzing fear.
That's fine right there in 2023, Daddy. You better not touch amateur. Look at that. You better not. Oh.
Cape Fear, starring Gregory Peck, Robert Mitchum, Polly Bergen. Cape Fear, the screen's most terrifying war of nerves.
I've seen the worst, the dregs, but you are the lowest.
You just put the law in my hands, and I'm gonna break your heart with it.
I got a little plan for you.
What a line.
They're never gonna forget. Never. Nancy!
See, I can't figure out if Nancy's 11 years old or 71. She got the same haircut my grandma had.
Cape Fear, the nightmare that becomes a shocking reality.
Oh, now, come on.
If you touch me, you'll go back to prison for life.
You want to make a little bet on that?
But you will. I'm not like Nancy. I'm not afraid to testify. I swear it. You've got to believe me. I'm not afraid.
That's how you apply a chokehold right there. Jeepers creepers. Guys, I can't tell you enough. Watch this damn film. You watch this movie, you'd be amazed. All right. So, you know, you saw in the room there, that was a hotel room with Max Cady and Diane Taylor. That is the same mother's house from Psycho, from just 2 years prior to that, where Martin Balsam's in this film. He died in that house in Psycho. That's the Bates house. A very cool piece of trivia. But you know, according to Robert Mitchum, during the filming of the final fight scene between him and Gregory Peck, he accidentally got punched in the face for real, and he knew that Mitchum knew that Peck didn't mean to, and he just kept going with it. Just kept going with it. He wasn't going to stop. He wasn't going to stop rolling. He wasn't going to stop filming. He was just going to go with it. And but when he got back to his trailer, Mitchum said that he collapsed because Peck had knocked the fuck out of him. And he said, I quote, "I don't feel sorry for anyone dumb enough who picks a fight with Gregory Peck." So, at the end of the day, Mitchum gave him his props. Peck didn't want to concede that he was acted off the screen by Mitchum, but Mitchum gave him his props. And at the end, well, hell, they're both dead, so fuck it. Two fine-ass actors to me. Gregory Peck, Robert Mitchum. You're not going to get two better protagonist-antagonist roles in one film than these two. But you can watch this film on Movie Land TV. Now, this is an app that I found on my Roku device. Movie Land TV. You'll recognize the logo. I believe it's a white background with like a pink or a purple arrow, like a play button. And it's all free with ads. But Movie Land TV, that's where you're going to find Cape Fear, 1962. So now that this thing is it's been said and done, we're going to go ahead and slide into the gag reels. But remember, check out the shows on the Slasher Sports Network. Within our family, we've got Slasher U with Christian Rao and Steve Feck, keeping you up to date with college sports. And I hope Steve's feeling better. He was battling COVID not too long ago, just a few days. I need to check on him as soon as we finish here. We got Suki's Honeydew Project, Suki Suburbia. If you don't love Suki Suburbia, there's something wrong with you. It's not wrong with her. It's wrong with you. Then we've, Suki, what she's doing is she's taking you into new uncharted waters. She's trying new things, getting you to try new things. Step out of your comfort zone. Do new things. Live your life. Good community builder is Suki. I don't talk enough about Suki Suburbia. I got a lot of time for her, though. She's about as kind a person as you're going to find. She will find a common ground with you and talk about it all day long. Okay, she and I are from two very different places. The only thing that we needed to know that we were Washington Redskins fans, now Washington Commanders fans. That's all it took. That's all it took to be very good friends to this day. And if you follow her at 80 Suburbia on Twitter, guarantee you're going to love her content. But yeah, she's getting you out of the house, getting you to some new activities that you might not have wanted to try on your own. And of course, we've got the OK Baseball Podcast. That's OBP. OBP doesn't mean on base percentage. It means OK Baseball Podcast. And that's with Christian Rao and Sean Doyle. They're covering the latest and greatest in Major League Baseball. And if you're patient, see me every day on there giving my little DFS picks. That's daily fantasy sports. I like to play DraftKings, and I like to share the things that I've got going on too. So my picks are your picks. So that's going to do it for this episode of Slasher Sports Cinema. I do hope that you will join me on the next one. If all goes well, we're going to be talking about the film Intruder from the late 80s, a little grocery store slasher. I should have said, as much as I like alliteration, as much as I love alliteration, I flubbed and didn't say supermarket slasher. I'll go back and edit it in. It doesn't matter. Guys, this has been Slasher Sports Cinema. I am Billy Graves. Now, may you go forth and drink the blood of your enemies from the skulls of their children.